The galaxy had been ruled by the same powers for 11,000 years. The Galactic Concord was a union of 3,000 alien species. They controlled everything. They decided who could travel between stars. They decided who could trade. They decided who could live. At the heart of their power was something called the Resonance Network. It was a web of communication stations spread across the entire galaxy. It let every species talk to every other species instantly. No matter how far apart they were, they could speak as if they were in the same room. The network had taken 8,000 years to build. It connected 400,000 light-years of space. The Concord believed it made them gods. When humanity first left Earth and discovered faster-than-light travel, the Concord noticed. They watched the small blue planet with mild interest. Humans were primitive. They had only just learned to leave their own solar system. They were like children taking their first steps. Earth sent messages to the Concord. They asked for friendship. They asked to join the galactic community. They asked to trade, and learn, and grow alongside the other species. The Concord laughed. In the great halls of the capital world Vethra Prime, alien leaders mocked the human ambassadors. The Vethrani, a species of tall gray beings with 4 arms and cold black eyes, found the humans especially amusing. High Commander Zethkara looked at the human diplomats and saw nothing but weak creatures from a weak world. "You wish to join us?" he asked. His voice was like stones grinding together. "You have nothing to offer. Go back to your little planet. Play with your little ships. Do not bother us again." The human ambassadors left in silence. They did not argue. They did not beg. They simply left. This should have been a warning. For the next 50 years, humanity grew quietly. They built colonies on distant worlds. They mined asteroids. They developed new technologies. They did all of this without asking permission from the Concord. This made the Concord angry. In the halls of power, the Vethrani hegemony proposed a solution. They called it the quieting. It was a simple thing. When a species became annoying or dangerous or simply unwanted, the Concord would erase them. They would burn their worlds. They would scatter their people. They would delete every record of their existence. The Concord had done this 47 times before. 47 species had been silenced. Their names were forgotten. Their worlds were empty graves. Now it was humanity's turn. High Commander Zethkara volunteered to lead the enforcement fleet. It was considered an honor. Destroying a primitive species would bring glory to his family name. He assembled 12,000 warships. It was the largest fleet ever sent against a single world. He wanted to make sure nothing survived. The fleet traveled through hyperspace for 3 weeks. When they arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, Zethkara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He looked at the small blue planet on his view screen. It looked peaceful. It looked fragile. He opened a communication channel. He wanted the humans to know what was coming. He wanted them to feel fear before they died. "Attention, planet Earth," he announced. His voice was broadcast across every frequency. "This world has been sentenced to silence. Your species has been judged unworthy of existence. You will not be remembered. Your children will not grow old. Your cities will become dust. This is the will of the Galactic Concord." He paused. He expected screaming. He expected begging. He expected the humans to cry and plead for mercy. There was only silence. Zethkara felt a small flicker of confusion, but he pushed it aside. These creatures were simply too primitive to understand what was happening. They would learn soon enough. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. 12,000 ships moved into position around Earth, their weapons charged with deadly energy. Plasma cannons glowed red, kinetic rods loaded into launch tubes. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half aimed at the blue world below. What Zethkara did not know was that humanity had been listening. For decades, Human scientists had secretly tapped into the resonance network. They had learned every secret. They had listened to the screams of the 47 species who came before them. Humanity knew this day would come. They had prepared. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers hidden under mountains and oceans, humanity's true military waited. The ships the Concorde had seen were decoys. Old vessels meant to be destroyed. The real fleet was somewhere else entirely, built in secret, hidden in the darkness between planets. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo sat in a command center beneath the Pacific Ocean. She was a woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had dedicated her entire life to this moment. On screens around her, she watched the alien fleet take position. Her advisors looked at her with fear in their eyes. Billions of people were about to die. There was nothing they could do to stop the initial attack. "Ma'am," one of them whispered, "they are preparing to fire." Amara nodded slowly. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. "Let them," she said quietly. "Let them think they have won. And then we will teach them what human silence really means." Above Earth, the first plasma lances began to fall. The sky turned red. Cities began to burn. The quieting had begun, but the Vethrani had made a terrible mistake. They thought humanity would die like the others. They thought humans would scream and beg and disappear. They were wrong. Humanity had never learned how to surrender. And tonight, the galaxy would learn why that made them the most dangerous species ever born. The bombardment began at 3:47 in the morning. The first plasma lances cut through the atmosphere like burning swords. They struck New York first, then Tokyo, then London, then Mumbai. One by one, the great cities of Earth began to die. High Commander Zeth Kara watched from his bridge with satisfaction. The planet below was lighting up with fires. Mushroom clouds of dust and debris rose into the sky. The oceans boiled where kinetic rods struck the water. It was beautiful in its destruction. "Casualties?" he asked his tactical officer. "Approximately 800 million in the first hour, Commander." Zeth Kara nodded. "Continue the bombardment. I want nothing left alive." By the third hour, 2 billion humans had died. 2 billion. Mothers and fathers, children and grandparents, teachers and farmers, artists and scientists, all turned to ash in the fires that fell from the sky. But Earth did not break. In her bunker beneath the ocean, Secretary General Amara Okonkwo watched the death toll rise. Tears ran down her face, but her voice remained steady. Around her, military officers waited for her command. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "How much longer?" she asked. General Marcus Chen, a tall man with silver hair, checked his displays. "The Obsidian Fleet reports ready. All Cascade disruptors are charged. We can fire on your order." Amara closed her eyes. She thought about the billions already dead. She thought about the children who would never grow up. She thought about the aliens who had done this simply because they could. "Launch Operation Prometheus," she said. "God forgive us for what we are about to do." The order went out across secret channels. In the asteroid belt, hidden among rocks and ice, massive ships began to wake up. On Europa, beneath the frozen surface, engines roared to life. On the dark side of the moon, weapon platforms aimed at the sky. This was the Obsidian contingency. Humanity's true military force. Ships built in absolute secrecy for 50 years. Weapons that the Concorde had never imagined. An entire fleet that existed in no database, on no record, in no file. The Vethrani had seen only what humanity wanted them to see. Now they would see the truth. The first sign that something was wrong came when a Vethrani destroyer on the edge of the formation simply vanished. One moment it was there. The next moment it was gone. No explosion. No debris. Just empty space where a ship used to be. Zeth Kara frowned at his display. What happened to the crushing tide? Before anyone could answer, another ship vanished. Then another. Then 10 more. "Commander!" his tactical officer shouted. "We are detecting unknown energy signatures. Hundreds of them. They are coming from everywhere. From the darkness of space." The Obsidian fleet emerged. Their hulls were painted black as night. Their engines ran cold and silent. They had been drifting into position for months, invisible to every sensor, and they carried weapons the galaxy had never seen. The Cascade Disruptors were humanity's answer to alien technology. They did not fire missiles or plasma or kinetic rounds. They fired pulses of energy that attacked the very nature of reality. They targeted the quantum fields that made faster-than-light travel possible. When a Cascade Disruptor hit a ship, it did not explode. It collapsed. The laws of physics bent and twisted around it. Crews experienced 17 dimensions at once. Their minds shattered before their bodies came apart. Their atoms scattered across light years in an instant. It was not death. It was something far worse. General Chen gave the order. All ships, fire at will. 1,000 Cascade Disruptors fired simultaneously. The pulse of energy washed across the Vethrani fleet like a wave of pure destruction. High Commander Zeth Kara had exactly 2 seconds to understand what was happening. He watched his tactical display turn red. Every ship in his fleet was failing. Reality itself seemed to be breaking apart around him. He tried to give an order to retreat. The words never left his mouth. The eternal judgment did not explode. It folded. It twisted. It became something that could not exist in normal space. Zeth Kara's last moment of consciousness was a scream that existed in frequencies no translator could ever process. And then there was silence. Where 12,000 Vethrani warships had floated, there was now only empty space. A few pieces of debris. Some frozen bodies. Nothing else. In her bunker, Secretary General Okonkwo watched the tactical display update. 12,000 enemy ships destroyed. 0 survivors. Time elapsed. 14 seconds. The officers around her were silent. Some were crying. Some were praying. All of them understood that humanity had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. General Chen spoke softly. "The enemy fleet is eliminated. Earth's orbit is clear." Amara nodded. Above them, the bombardment had stopped. The fires still burned, but no new ones fell from the sky. Billions were dead, but billions more were still alive. "This is not over," she said. "The Concord will send more fleets. They will never stop coming." She turned to face her officers. "Which is why we cannot let them try." She pulled up a new display. It showed a map of the entire galaxy. Millions of points of light marked the relay stations of the resonance network. "They silenced 47 species," she said. "Tonight, we teach them what real silence sounds like." General Chen understood immediately. His face went pale. "The Ghost Armada," he whispered. Amara nodded. "Send the activation code. It is time for the galaxy to go dark." The message traveled across hidden channels to ships that had been drifting in the void for 3 years. 15,000 vessels crewed by volunteers who knew they would never come home. Humanity was not going to wait for the next attack. Humanity was going to strike first. And the galaxy would never be the same. The news of the Vethrani fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The resonance network carried the message to every corner of known space. 12,000 warships, gone in 14 seconds. The largest enforcement fleet ever assembled. Wiped out by primitives. At first, no one believed it. On Vethra Prime, the High Council demanded confirmation. When the confirmation came, they demanded it again. When it came a second time, they fell into chaos. Advisors screamed at each other. Generals blamed their intelligence officers. Politicians blamed the generals. High Commander Zeth Kara had been one of the most celebrated warriors in Vethrani history. His fleet had been equipped with the finest weapons in the galaxy. He had enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. and humanity had killed him in less time than it took to draw a breath. Emergency sessions began across the Concord. On 1,000 capital worlds, alien leaders gathered to discuss what to do. Some were terrified. Some were furious. All of them were confused. "We must strike back immediately," shouted the ambassador from the Creeth Collective. He was a massive creature covered in hard scales, his eyes burning with rage. "Send 100 fleets. Burn their entire solar system to ash." "And what weapons do we use?" asked the delegate from the Orion Syndicate. She was a thin being made of living crystal, her voice like chiming bells. "They destroyed our ships without even touching them. We do not know how. We do not know if we can defend against it." "Then we learn," the Creeth ambassador roared. "We capture their technology. We study it. You cannot capture technology from a species that just killed 12,000 of your best warriors," another voice said quietly. The debates went on for days. Then weeks. Proposals were made and rejected. Alliances formed and broke apart. Fear spread through the Concord like a disease. They debated for 11 days. They should have been running. In the darkness between stars, the Ghost Armada waited. 15,000 ships hung motionless in the void. They had been there for 3 years, drifting slowly into position. Their hulls were painted the color of emptiness. Their engines were cold and dead. To every sensor in the galaxy, they looked like nothing at all. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Shadow's Edge, the flagship of the Ghost Armada. He was 63 years old. His wife had died in the bombardment of Tokyo. His son had died in Beijing. He had nothing left to live for, except this mission. Around him, his crew worked in absolute silence. They knew what they were about to do. They knew that most of them would never see Earth again. They had volunteered anyway. Chen looked at the tactical display. It showed the positions of every relay station in the resonance network. 2.7 million stations scattered across the galaxy, each one a vital node in the web that connected the Concord. Without the network, the galaxy would go silent. Species that had communicated instantly for thousands of years would be cut off from each other. Ships would be lost without navigation data. Economies would collapse. Governments would fall. It was the cruelest weapon humanity had ever designed. Chen activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every ship in the Armada. "This is Admiral Chen," he said. 3 years ago, we left our homes. We said goodbye to everyone we loved. We knew we might never return. Today, we fulfill our purpose." He paused. On 15,000 ships, crews stopped what they were doing to listen. 11 days ago, they attacked our world. They killed billions of our people. They thought they could silence humanity the way they silenced 47 species before us. They were wrong. His voice grew hard. "We are not here for revenge. Revenge is personal. This is something else. This is a lesson." The Concord believed they could do whatever they wanted, because no one could stop them. "Tonight, we prove them wrong." He looked at the display one more time. Each of those 2.7 million dots represented a target. His ships would split into thousands of squadrons. Each squadron would hit hundreds of targets simultaneously. The timing had to be perfect. If even a few relays survived, the network might be able to rebuild. Humanity could not allow that. "They wanted us to be quiet," Chen continued. "They wanted us to disappear. Instead, we are going to show them what real silence sounds like. When we are done, they will spend the next 1,000 years remembering this night. They will tell their children about the species that turned off the stars." He took a deep breath. "All ships, begin final approach. Execute attack pattern. Omega. May God have mercy on us all." The Ghost Armada began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, ships scattered in every direction. They traveled through hyperspace in short jumps, careful to avoid detection. Each ship knew exactly where it needed to be and exactly when it needed to arrive. Across the galaxy, 2.7 million relay stations continued their work. They carried messages of panic and fear. They transmitted debates and arguments. They connected species that had been allies for millennia. None of them knew that death was coming. None of them knew that in exactly 72 hours, the galaxy would experience something it had never experienced in 11,000 years. Silence. True, absolute, terrifying silence. And by the time they realized what was happening, it would already be over. The resonance network had existed for 11,000 years. It was the greatest achievement of the Galactic Concord. It connected every inhabited world across 400,000 light-years. Messages traveled instantly from one end of the galaxy to the other. It was the nervous system of civilization itself. No one had ever imagined it could be destroyed. The relay stations were scattered across the galaxy in perfect patterns. Some floated in the emptiness between stars. Some orbited dead moons. Some sat on asteroids at the edge of forgotten solar systems. 2.7 million stations in total, each one maintaining the quantum links that made instant communication possible. The Concord had built automated defenses around the most important relays. But they had never expected an attack on all of them at once. Such an attack would require millions of ships. No species had that kind of fleet. No species, except humanity. The Ghost Armada did not have millions of ships. It had 15,000. But each ship carried a weapon called a null bomb. Unlike normal weapons, null bombs did not destroy matter. They destroyed the quantum bonds that made the relays work. One bomb could disable a dozen stations. The Armada carried enough bombs to hit every relay in existence. Admiral Chen watched the countdown on his display. His fleet had scattered across the galaxy. Each squadron was in position. Each ship was ready. In exactly 30 seconds, they would all fire at the same moment. He thought about his wife. He thought about his son. He thought about the 2 billion people who had died when the Vethrani attacked Earth. He thought about the 47 species who had been silenced before humanity. "This is for all of them," he whispered. The countdown reached 0. Across the galaxy, 15,000 ships fired simultaneously. Null bombs raced toward their targets. They traveled through hyperspace, appearing next to relay stations before any defense could react. The attack lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. In those 4.7 seconds, 2.7 million relay stations died. The quantum links that connected them simply stopped existing. The careful web that had taken 8,000 years to build came apart in less time than it takes to blink. And then the silence began. On Vethra Prime, the High Council was in the middle of an emergency session. Hundreds of delegates were arguing about what to do about humanity. Voices shouted over each other. Also, like seeing now I, without like pot for a Kennedy, any when daughters. Displays showed tactical information from across the Concord. Then every display went dark. The shouting stopped. Delegates looked at each other in confusion. Someone tried to send a message to their homeworld. Nothing happened. Someone else tried to access the network. There was no network to access. For the first time in 11,000 years, Vethra Prime was alone. The same scene played out on every inhabited world in the galaxy. On trading stations, merchants watched their communications die. On military bases, commanders lost contact with their fleets. On colony worlds, families were suddenly cut off from relatives on other planets. Ships traveling through hyperspace found themselves without navigation data. The network had provided real-time positioning information. Without it, they were blind. Some ships dropped out of hyperspace in empty space, lost and confused. Others never dropped out at all, vanishing forever into the void. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Kreth Collective, whose economy depended on instant trade agreements, collapsed within hours. Their currency became worthless. Their markets crashed. Riots broke out on every major world. The Orion Syndicate, which had used the network to coordinate their vast criminal empire, fractured into 1,000 warring factions. Without central leadership, lieutenants turned on each other. Blood flowed through streets that had been peaceful for centuries. The Vethrani hegemony, proud rulers of the enforcement fleets, found themselves scattered and leaderless. Their ships were spread across the galaxy, with no way to receive orders. Captains made their own decisions. Some tried to return home. Some declared themselves independent. Some went mad. Species that had evolved alongside the network suffered the worst. The Malari, a race of telepathic beings, had used the network to amplify their mental connections. When it died, thousands of Malari experienced sudden, violent disconnection. Many did not survive the shock. The Concorde did not fall slowly. It shattered like glass. In her bunker on Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo received reports from the Ghost Armada. The mission was a complete success. Every relay had been destroyed. The network was gone. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. "How many will die because of what we did?" she asked. General Chen's voice came through the communication system. He was still out there. Somewhere, in the darkness between stars. Millions. Maybe billions. The chaos alone will kill countless innocents. I know. Okonkwo closed her eyes. But they would have killed us all. They would have erased us from history. Sometimes, survival requires terrible choices. Yes, ma'am. It does. Okonkwo stood up slowly. Her body was tired. Her heart was heavy. But her mind was clear. Send a message to every human colony. Use our own communication systems. Tell them what we have done. Tell them why. And tell them to prepare. Prepare for what, ma'am? For whatever comes next. The galaxy will never forget this night. Some will hate us forever. Some will fear us. And some, she paused, some will come to us for help. Because we just proved that humanity knows how to survive. Out in the galaxy, the silence continued. Stars burned in the void. Planets turned in their orbits. But the voices that had connected them for 11,000 years were gone. Humanity had not screamed when they were attacked. They had answered, and now the galaxy would listen. 50 years had passed since the night the galaxy went dark. Historians would call it the severance. Poets would call it the Great Silence. The species who survived it simply called it the day everything changed. Earth had rebuilt. The scars of the bombardment remained. Craters dotted the continents where cities had once stood. Memorials marked the graves of 2 billion dead. But humanity had survived. They had grown stronger. And they had never forgotten. The rest of the galaxy had not been so fortunate. Without the resonance network, the Galactic Concorde had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Alliances that had lasted millennia collapsed overnight. Trading partners became enemies. Friends became strangers. The careful order that had ruled for 11,000 years turned to chaos. The Vethrani hegemony had fallen the hardest. Their military, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had scattered without central command. Civil war consumed their worlds for 2 decades. By the time the fighting ended, they had lost half their population. The proud species that had destroyed 47 civilizations was now struggling to survive. The Kreth Collective had fragmented into dozens of smaller kingdoms. Their economy never recovered. Worlds that had once been wealthy became poor and desperate. Their people remembered the old days like a dream that had faded too quickly. Other species adapted better. Some learned to build their own communication systems. Some formed new alliances with their neighbors. Some even thrived in the chaos, carving out small empires in the void left by the Concorde's fall. But all of them remembered who had caused the severance. All of them remembered humanity. On Earth, a new government had risen from the ashes. The old nations were gone, united by the common experience of near extinction. The United Human Federation now spoke with one voice, and that voice was heard across the stars. Secretary General Yuki Tanaka stood in the rebuilt halls of Geneva. She was 42 years old. Her grandmother had survived the bombardment of Osaka. Her mother had served in the reconstruction efforts. Yuki had grown up hearing stories of the severance, of the choice humanity had made to survive at any cost. Now she led her species into a new era. The alien ambassadors had arrived that morning. There were 12 of them, representing the largest surviving powers in the galaxy. Some were species humanity had never encountered before. Others were remnants of the old Concord, humbled and desperate. They gathered in the Great Hall, surrounded by human guards in black uniforms. Holographic displays showed images of Earth and its colonies. The human flag hung from the ceiling, a blue planet on a field of stars. Yuki entered the hall and took her seat at the head of the table. The alien ambassadors watched her with a mixture of fear and hope. 50 years ago, their predecessors had laughed at human diplomats. Now they came as petitioners to the species they had tried to destroy. "Thank you for coming," Yuki said. Her voice was calm and measured. "I know the journey was difficult without the network. I appreciate your effort." The lead ambassador was a Vethrani. His name was Kethral, and he was the grandson of a warrior who had died in the severance. He stood slowly, his forearms clasped in a gesture of respect. "Secretary General," he said. His voice was rough, humbled by decades of hardship. "We come to ask for your help. The galaxy is broken. Our people are dying. Wars rage across 100 sectors. We cannot rebuild what was lost. Not alone." Yuki listened without expression. She had expected this. Her advisors had predicted it years ago. Eventually, the galaxy would come to humanity for help. They had no choice. "You ask for our help," she said slowly. 50 years ago, your people came to our world with 12,000 warships. You killed 2 billion of our citizens. You tried to erase us from existence." Kethral lowered his head. "We know. We remember. Do you?" Yuki stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the memorial gardens where the names of the dead were carved into black stone. "My grandmother watched her city burn. My mother grew up in refugee camps. I was born in a world still counting its dead." She turned back to face the ambassadors. Her eyes were hard. "You called it the quieting. You had done it 47 times before. 47 species erased from history because you decided they were not worthy of existence. You thought we would be number 48. Silence filled the hall. The alien ambassadors did not move. "You learned something that night," Yuki continued. "You learned that humanity does not beg. We do not plead. We do not go quietly into the darkness." She paused. "We answer. And when we answer, galaxies tremble." She walked back to her seat and sat down slowly. "But we are not monsters. We do not want to rule through fear. We destroyed the network because we had no choice. It was survival. Nothing more, nothing less." Kethral looked up, with hope in his ancient eyes. "Then you will help us?" Yuki studied him for a long moment. She thought about everything humanity had suffered. She thought about the billions who had died. She thought about the choice her predecessors had made to strike back with such terrible force. Then she thought about the future. A galaxy in chaos helped no one. Endless wars and suffering would only create more enemies. Humanity could stand alone forever, feared but isolated. Or they could choose a different path. "We will help you," she said finally. "But not as servants, not as subjects. As equals. The old Concord is dead. Whatever rises in its place will include humanity at the table. Not asking for permission, not begging for acceptance. We will be there because we earned our place." She leaned forward. "You came to silence us. You learned that humanity does not scream. We answer. And now you will listen for as long as we decide to speak. Those are our terms. Accept them or leave." The ambassadors looked at each other. 50 years ago, they would have laughed at such demands. Now, they had no choice. One by one, they nodded their acceptance. Yuki allowed herself a small smile. Outside the window, The sun was setting over a world that had refused to die. Across the stars, humanity's colonies were growing stronger every day. The galaxy that had once dismissed them as primitives now came to them for salvation. The silence that had followed the severance was ending. A new age was beginning, and this time, humanity would not be ignored. They had learned the hardest lesson in the universe. Survival was not given, it was taken. And those who tried to silence humanity had discovered the most dangerous truth of all. When humanity stopped talking, the wise started running. Because human silence was never surrender. It was always the calm before the storm.